Okay, I think I'm ready. If you're ready, and if you're out there, let me know. That's always a good thing. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are all over the globe. I just need to press a few buttons here so I know what's going on. Let me see if anyone's out there yet. I'm all alone here, meaning I don't have a producer. And that means I'm going to, I want to take questions and do what I can for questions. But, it's going to be a little slow because I don't have someone help me out and pulling things up and helping me with my screens. Just another second here. We'll get started. Okay. And I think I'm ready. Are you ready? I was going to say something else, but what I want to tell you first is I'm kind of excited about this one. This is a new system that I've developed, and I'm going to give you a little overview of how this happened. I was at a trade show, and I was a presenter there. And as a presenter, I also had a booth, and I'm talking, it was spa show, estheticians, and I was talking about essential oils, which is what I do, and skincare. And as I was talking about them, people expect me to say this oil for that is always what people expect me to do. And it's not really what I do. I give you systems and I give you ways of thinking about the oils. I give you philosophies. And what I realized is, and as I was speaking, I was saying it this way, I was saying that you have to understand the essential oils in layers. When you're selecting an oil, what's the response you're looking for? And that's what I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to be discussing those layers that I kept bringing up. So I'm going to get started in a second here. I just got to fix a technical difficulty. Always fun to have tech issues. Love that when you get started with the presentation. Anyway, like I said, I don't have a producer and I don't have someone that's taking care of these things and running around the room for me. So I'm going to be on my own. And I am Jim Harrison. For those of you who have not met me or talked to me before, I've been working with essential oils for 30 years plus. And I have been in almost every area of working with essential oils, meaning that I started out as a clinician. I owned a spa, and that's when I found out about essential oils. And I also worked with essential oils in formulating skincare. So I was one of the pioneers of plant-based skincare. This is in the early 2000s, actually right around 2000 when I did that. And then I ended up teaching at a medical university here in the Seattle area where I live. I've been teaching and I've been traveling and I've been formulating, and it's a passion, it's a love. And it really comes from the fact that essential oils are an amazing tool on every level of wellness. So today I'm going to be talking about that in a perspective of how to understand essential oils in a completely evolved fashion. So let me just erase a few things here. Get rid of that so I can bring up my presentation, which is this right here. We're going to be talking about the Tiered Aromatherapy System, which is the title that I've given to what I was telling you. I layer essential oils, or I shouldn't say I layer them. Essential oils themselves are a layered system. So that's why I'm referring it to a tiered aromatherapy system. It's a sensory guide to plant-based wellness, is really what this is all about. And this is what I'm going to teach you. And this is what I'm going to talk about. And so as we drift along here, let me just introduce the tiered system to you first. Okay. So let's bring that up a little closer first. Now, the tiered system, like I said, I've just recently created this system. I've been working with it forever. All right. And it definitely is a comprehensive framework for essential oil therapy. And it's integrating sensory experience and neuroscience with the therapeutic precision of using plant-based wellness. Now, more specifically, plant-based, I'm talking about essential oils. So the system was developed to show you the different perspective, and also it's a bit of a philosophy here on how to understand your use of essential oils. What drove me to doing this, and again, this is not a new system for me. This is just, I've developed the system. I've organized it. But I have been looking at essential oils forever in that it is such a fragmented practice. Now, the common practice, it focuses solely on emotions or symptoms or relying on generic oil lists, right? So you go to a book, you find a recipe, and that's what you use. You go to a book because you want to know what you're supposed to do with patchouli or frankincense or lavender. And it becomes very fragmented because it really puts you into a lane. And that's what I'm trying to take you out of. When we talk about essential oils, you know, if you come to me and you say, oh, I'm really stressed out, a typical aromatherapy approach would be, oh, smell some lavender or smell some marjoram or some other oil that is generally listed as a calming, stress-reducing oil. That works. But my philosophy, my approach is that I want to know who the person is. I want to go beyond what the symptom is. And I also want to select the oil based on other things other than what would be the chemistry in this perspective of if I chose lavender or if I chose marjoram. It's chemistry. The molecular structure of those oils, and I'm going to be talking about that as a tier, the chemistry, the molecular structure is basically telling you that, yeah, this is stress relieving. It's been researched, it's been studied, lots of clinical use of marjoram for stress relief, and we know it works. That is typical aromatherapy in the way that we think, but that is so fragmented. And I also found it doesn't work. It's not consistent. And that was the thing right from the start that always encouraged me to dig a little bit deeper. Why is it that essential oil therapy, when I select it for a client and it works for stress, let's say, but then I try it on another client and it doesn't work? And it turns into that mix. It works in this situation. It doesn't work in that situation. And I shouldn't even use the word situation. I should be saying it works for this person and not for that person. So one of the key things here, and I'll repeat this a lot, is we're not choosing essential oils for the symptom. We're choosing them for the person with the symptoms. Now, why a tiered system? How did I come up with this? Well, the tiered system, what we're talking about here is that it's different ways that essential oils can work. So what I wanted to do is create a framework around how I have analyzed, how I have used, how I have discovered, how I have researched, and how I have organized these tiers or these different ways that essential oils work. Now, when I say this, I'm not doing separate, okay? That was when I mentioned lanes, right? So you're using the oil for inhalation for emotions, or you're using it topically for pain. That's getting into a lane. And what I'm doing is I'm telling you that we're not doing this in lanes. We're doing this as a synergistic system. And that's what the tiered system is. So this helps you to organize what I'm calling the complexity of how essential oils work. So what I want to do is I want to get away from being in a lane, to understanding that if we don't want to call them tiers, we can call them a lot of lanes, right? Because that's basically what I'm talking about on how we select the oils. But these tiers are synergistic. They're all happening at the same time. Now, this is what I really like about working in tiers. Actually, let me go beyond that, because it's what I like about working with essential oils. Essential oils are extremely personal. Not for the symptom, for the person with the symptom. When you start getting into it being for the person with the symptom, you start getting into a different way of working. And so what we're going to look at here is we want to understand that, and I'll just read this the way I've written it. Effective aromatherapy requires matching oils to the individual's needs and lifestyle. Do you see I've added a little bit more than just, this person has symptoms, these are the causes. That's generally what we look at in holistic, the cause and the symptom. There's other pieces we have to include here. Lifestyle is one of them. When we're talking about the person, we need to understand the person's habits, their behaviors, their lifestyle. And it's not just symptoms when we start looking at that. So this is how we get to a personalized approach, which is going to maximize therapeutic benefits. And this assures a holistic experience that aligns with the client's unique circumstances. This is so key in understanding how we're using the oils in a tiered system. So it becomes a very personalized system. Now, before I go any deeper, I should probably bring this up, that if you want to work with this in your clinic, in your spa, in your wellness center, there may be an additional service you should add, which would be your intake, which becomes more of a consultation. You want to talk to the person, you want to find out as much information as you can. Now, if you don't want to add this on as a service, which is, if you price that out, you're talking about an hour, and also a blending. You're gonna personally blend the essential oil. Now, this is really the best way to do this, and this is how I educate. And I've gone to many spas, wellness centers, and people that really want to learn this system so that it can become a service, because the service is so phenomenal. It's the treatment. It's going to be something people want to continue. They may even want to do the consultation over and over again, right? But it's not necessary. Now, that's if you want to go full force with this. You can also do this where you personalize and you have a set of blends, right? And the blends can have different fragrance profiles. One's citrusy, one's floral, one's herbal, woody, whatever. But also in the therapeutic function of each one of those blends, you can personalize in that way. And so there's several ways to do this. I have a class coming up. I'll talk about that at the end. But in that class, I'm going to show you how to do the application. I'm going to show you how to do the choices. Right now, I just need to review the system so you understand what the system is all about. But if you really want to learn, personalizing it is incredible. Now, here we have what I'm calling the power of 7, because we have 7 tiers. And I didn't do that, consciously. I didn't say, oh, I think I want to do the power of 7, have 7 tiers. No, I didn't do it that way. I just listed all of the layers that I find I'm using when I select essential oils. All of the layers that define how essential oils perform. How are they a therapeutic ingredient? It's through these different layers. And it just so happens that it turned into 7 tiers. They're each distinct, but they're interconnected. They are interconnected. You so need to understand that we're not selecting one tier in this application, and then we'll select this tier for another personalized application. Every time you use essential oils, you are delivering the 7 tiers. The power of 7. Now, power of 7, just to kind of give you some framework for that. Power of 7, there's 7 days to the week. There's 7 chakras. There's the 7 deadly sins. I don't know how that fits, 7 deadly sins. And what was the thing? The 7 things about, incredible things are in the world. I forgot what that was called. Anyway, power 7. We have 7 tiers. That's what I'm going to be introducing to you here. And what I'm going to do is first give you the overview of what these 7 tiers are. So it's a holistic model. I always found holistic to be a little limiting. So before I kind of review that screen there, holism. I walk into the university that I teach at. It's a herbal medicine, natural medicine university. And on the door, it talks about holistic. And it's defined as mind, body, spirit, which to me is very limiting. I think there's a better definition than mind, body, spirit when you want to think holistic. I have a system called the outside, inside, out method for analysis, which kind of comes from beauty inside out, but beauty inside out to me is also limiting. And so what I've done is I have some courses, and I've written a lot about my definition of holism, so I'm not going to get too deep there. But just to understand, define mind, and it becomes too expansive to put into a little box in this holistic model. Define body and mind are pretty much the same thing. And spirit, everyone has a different definition of spirit. And so it's way too hard to take that and turn it into a holistic model. And this is going to be very holistic. So as I go along, I'll bring more of that in, but I just really want you to understand my definition of holism, which I didn't give you, of course, but I'm just telling you it's expansive. So this model is an expansive, holistic model that emphasizes interaction, not separate. These are interconnected tiers or layers that are happening every time you use an essential oil. So it's these multiple levels, and it's really about experience. I could keep repeating that word because that's what I want to deliver when I use essential oils. I don't want to just have therapy. I want it to be a therapeutic experience when I use oils, and that's what these tiers help you to do. So it does give you this unique pathway of therapeutic interaction, facilitating a comprehensive approach to essential oil therapy. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Tier 1, just like I've been saying, these tiers are not separate. They're not isolated. They are interconnected. So even though I'm numbering them, I'm doing that just for organizational sake. And they're not on any way, one's, tier 1 is, above tier 2 and tier 3. No. Holistic, connected. Think of more like a circle than this linear line. So now that I've told you about how I'm numbering these guys, let me tell you about tier 1. Sense silent language. This course is still in development, or this system is still in development. And I may change some of the language I'm using. So what am I saying when I talk about sense silent language? I'm talking about the olfactory response. I'm talking about the olfactory response in a way that a lot of times we miss the messages coming in through our sense of smell. And as I'm writing here, scent plays a vital role in emotional signaling and physiological response. What I find too often happens is that when we think olfactory, it's always said, well, it's emotion. It calms you, or it energizes you, or gives you focus, and so on and so on and so on. It's generally emotional. But the physiological response to smelling is very profound. It affects your central nervous system. It affects your autonomic nervous system. And through the limbic system, when you're smelling, it translates scent into neurotransmitter communication. Neurotransmitters are molecules that travel through the body and signal cells and nerves to respond or to react. This is how hormones work. This is how essential oils work. I'm going to talk about that as a tier, that neurotransmitter type communication. So your nervous system, hormones, and emotions are getting the message of this tiered system in the olfactory system. Again, I'm going to talk about this in the course to show you how do you work with scent and olfactory. There's a lot. I have written a lot, especially if you're on LinkedIn. I have so much information there in my blogs on my website, which is jimharrison.com. Olfactory, scent, emotion, experience, physiology, all of the things that happen through the olfactory system. I just find it amazing and incredible when you understand the power of the sense of smell. There's actually a lot more people are becoming aware of this. You're seeing a lot more about scent and how important a scent is. I actually created a course that is called Aromatic Scent Design or Biophilic Scent Design with Aromatherapy. Powerful what scent can do. Tier 2 piece. Tier 2, cellular communication or conversations. This is also very important to understand. What you want to know about cellular communication is that when you smell, the olfactory nerve endings that are at the top of the nasal cavity, when you smell, it's a molecule that's like a key. The receptor is like a lock. And when that molecule key fits, it gets into that lock, that olfactory receptor, and triggers a response, and that's what goes to the limbic system. Now, to understand this a little bit deeper, there are receptors all through your body. There are a lot of surface receptors. So what I have here is a diagram of the epidermal layer. Well, actually, the dermal layer is in there as well. And if you can, blow the screen up a bit here so you can actually see what's in there. But the green and the red letters there, which is referring to the endocannabinoid system, are the red ones. That's CB1, CB2, and TRP receptors. So these are the receptors that are at the surface of the skin. And when you put oils on topically, lock and key, the oils are molecules that are like a key. The receptors, when that key fits into a cell receptor, it's a lock, triggers that cell receptor. It creates an activity. So a lot of what's going on when you use essential oils topically is similar to when you're inhaling them. I'm going to be doing a course on for Derma Education TV coming up in November, and I'm doing it on surface receptors as well as absorption, which I don't include absorption in the tiers, because when you absorb oils, they actually go to receptors. So it is cellular conversations that even absorptions, the oils getting into the bloodstream, how they react. You have surface receptors all over your skin. You actually have olfactory nerve endings on your skin as well. And so what you have are TRP, and there's one of the TRP receptors. When you put menthol, peppermint, on your skin, you ever get that cooling feeling? That's because that molecule, menthol, is a key that fits a certain TRP receptor. It triggers that receptor, and it triggers a cool sensation. So that's the reason why peppermint or menthol is cooling. When you put it on your skin, it hits a receptor, it's triggering a response. The anti-inflammatory properties coming from, there's one compound in essential oils called beta-caryophyllene. That's also the CBD, the cannabinoid that's in the cannabis plant. So when you put cannabis on your skin topically, that receptor, the CB1 and CB2, are responding in that lock and key fashion and triggering anti-inflammatory properties. There are a lot of interesting things that are, in this cellular conversation that the essential oils are having with molecule lock and key. This is something we don't think about anywhere near enough. Nature's deep bond. Human beings share a biophilic bond. When I say biophilic or biophilia, it's a term from biology referring to our genetic coding, our genetic desire to be in nature. In forest bathing, this is a Japanese practice that became popularized through the Japanese practice of bringing people who are really stressed out into the forest, and they found that it reduced the stress, reduced suicide tendencies, and also boosted the immune system. So that's the power of nature. Going into the forest, that is healing. Go into the forest. Now, this has a physiological as well as an emotional response. This gets really deep, and it's the kind of thing I can only give you a superficial understanding of in terms of working with essential oils. So just to give you an idea, when you walk in nature and you smell nature, those are volatile molecules, the same molecules that we get when we distill the plants that you're smelling. So when you smell an essential oil, you're smelling being in the forest, you're smelling being in the garden, you're smelling being in the fields. You are smelling and responding to biophilia. They did a study, this is the forest from out of forest bathing, where they brought participants into a room and diffused hinoki. Hinoki is the tree that's most common in the Japanese forest. And they found that there was the same effect. There's also a study where they, with hospital patients, same surgeries, a lot, everything was basically similar. The people who were in just concrete, away from nature, no windows, rooms, healed much slower and had more complications than the people who had windows looking at nature or even just had photos of nature. Nature heals. I have a lot, again, all of this information you're going to find spread out all over my LinkedIn and blogs because, like I said, I've been doing this forever. And I just finally said, hey, this is an aromatherapy system. This is powerful. So understanding when you use essential oils, there is also that nature response. Instead of just letting that be random, which is the terminology I use a lot when I'm talking about how to approach these tiers, and just letting them be random means you're not paying attention, but they're happening anyway. Pay attention. How do you want to use this? With somebody that grew up in the woods, like Pacific Northwest, for instance, lots of woods, lots of parks, beautiful fragrances from that. A person grows up there and they tend to be stressed and they're living in the city now, like New York City, and far away from all those familiar odors. If you give them something that helps, even if it's for pain, right? You're giving them something for pain, and you also including something for emotions, but include that biophilic response, include the odors that they grew up on, the ones that make them feel good. That's how you use this nature's deep bond tier. I love this stuff. Can you tell? Hey, let's go to tier 4. Precision plant chemistry. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because this is basically how everybody uses essential oils, whether they know the chemistry or not. When they go to recipes, when they look at books, when they study, you study chemistry in depth. I am big on studying chemistry. It was one of the first, The first class that I really created was based hardcore on chemistry. So when you understand the functional therapeutic actions of essential oils, you're understanding them from the chemical compounds. I mentioned that already. When I mentioned menthol, you're understanding the peppermint and the cooling property from the chemistry. When I talked about beta-caryophyllene, which is in copaiba, that oil has beta-caryophyllene, which when you put it on the skin, it binds with that receptor, the CB2 receptor, and it triggers an anti-inflammatory response. This is understanding the chemistry. If you really want to be a master in working with essential oils, study the chemistry. It's not, what was I going to say? It's not that difficult. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's chemistry. If you don't have a scientific background, it's likely could be more difficult than if you do have a scientific background. But what I found, because I taught at a medical university and I was outside the curriculum, so I had a mix of scientific and non-scientific students. And I had to teach them at the same time without boring the scientist and without confusing the non-scientist. And so the systems that I've developed for teaching chemistry are specifically about essential oils. And so it is a system that you need to learn. And it's not that difficult, but it is science, it is chemistry, and you do need to learn how that works. And here we go. I was playing with some technology there for a second. Excuse me. I like to have fun with this stuff. Anyway, this is tier 5, the inner compass. This is likely something that you're not including in your essential oils. So let me just read what I have scripted here because it kind of explains it well. So we're talking about intuition, and I could put intention along with this, even though intention is a little bit different. But we're talking about an intuitive process. And the intuition in an oil selection involves subconscious pattern recognition, which is what intuition is about. So if you study the chemistry and you know the chemistry and you absorb the chemistry, you don't need to think about the chemistry when you're selecting an oil because it's already in you, it's part of you. And you let your intuition, based on that knowledge that's within you, and you subconsciously will go to your inner knowledge of chemistry, but you're really using a more intuitive sense. You're not saying, oh, the beta-caryophyllene is anti-inflammatory, so that's what I'm going to use. You're going to go off that track a little bit, and you're going to allow yourself to stretch. And this is why when I talked about lanes and I talked about generic formulas that are in books, that guides too much about how we work with essential oils. Those are good. Let them become your inner self, and then subconsciously let that drive your intuition to select essential oils. So this inner compass is so important. And the reason I like to put intention in with this as well is because intention drives results. And even though it's a different category, intention and intuition, I like to think of how you use your intuition as part of the intention of what you're trying to accomplish. So tier 5 is that inner compass. You need to understand how that works and how it's part of who you are. Now here's in tier 6, I've mentioned already. And I mentioned in the way that I said I would repeat this a lot. You're not choosing oils for the symptom. You're choosing oils for the person with the symptom. And this is what that unique code is all about. The unique code, and I'm talking about your unique code, but I'm talking about as a therapist, you want to know who that person is. And this is where I bring in my outside, inside out method. And this graphic just explains it so well. And so when you're thinking about what oil you want to choose and you want to work with the person, not the symptom, this is my outside, inside out system. So again, this graphic in a way displays what I talk about when I talk about outside, inside out. Beyond beauty, inside out. Because they're not talking about thinking internal and how it shows up outside. You really have to start from the outside. You know, there's work and there's stress and there's environment, which is shown here as CO2. And there's insomnia if you have poor sleep. But insomnia is usually caused by outside influences, not so much part of the outside. So what I'm saying here is when you look at what's going on out here, we all absorb that information in a different way. We all process that information in a different way. We internalize that information in a different way. So this is why I start outside. I want to know what this person is exposed to. and knowing what the person is exposed to, including relationships, then I want to know how they respond to these issues, because everybody responds differently. There could be in work-related stress, a boss that totally stresses this woman out, right? But then she has a coworker who's not affected by that same boss, the same stressors that come from the boss, but he internalizes the information differently. This is so key to how you are going to select your essential oils. You need to understand, what are the outside influences? How are they internalizing it? That's the inside. And then how is that being expressed? And that's generally what the symptoms are, excuse me, that you're dealing with. So let me go to my next tier 7, which in the way that I'm counting here is the last tier. This is daily unfoldment. I'm talking about rituals. I'm talking about lifestyles. And so what you're doing is the consistent use of essential oils. This is at home. My friends in the spa wellness clinic, therapists, all of you friends of mine out there, retail. I don't understand the resistance to retail. I don't know why every therapist is not excited and motivated to sell their therapy for their clients to take home, because that's what you are doing. You are sending the client home with you when you do that. And there are lots of layers to this, okay? And that's another thing that I explain when I get into understanding what retail is, understanding olfactory system, understanding therapy, understanding who you are in relationship to your guest or to your client. So this is what I'm talking about. If I'm saying retailing, you're sending that person home with consistent use of essential oils, which are going to facilitate the formation of emotional and physiological habits. These systems. So if you send a person home and you're telling them what the techniques are for using that product, you're giving them a habit, an emotional and a physiological habit. The more they do that, the more their emotions are going to become more positive, the more their physiological changes are going to become more wellness oriented or healthy. So this is what an essential oil lifestyle is. Daily integration enhances the therapeutic effects, supports self-care, and promotes overall wellness. You need to send your clients home with you. There's an olfactory bond when you do this. And with the positive results, with the olfactory bond, I'm kind of getting into a business model here. That's retention. It's retention. And so your work, your skills are then transferred to the product that they take home. And these essential oil products are so key for take home. Lots of layers on how you can use that. I'm going to discuss that in the course that I have coming up in September. And the retail, you can make money off of retail. So that's cool because it's business, right? But you're sending them home with your therapy. Then they're creating lifestyles. They're creating habits. Habits that are positive create positive wellness, positive health, positive emotions. What you're also doing is you're creating a bond between you and your guest, because olfactory memory emotion is triggered, creating that bond. So every time they use that product, you are in their space. You are in their head. You are a positive influence that they are going to want to return to, which is client retention. So from a business model, this is a powerful step. From an aromatherapy therapeutic use level, this is also an important step because essential oils are a lifestyle. It's not a drug. So you're not going to use the oil one time and then never use it again, because it just doesn't work that way. If you have pain and you use it, it makes your pain go away, and then your pain doesn't come back again for months. That's not the way you use essential oils. You use essential oils to get rid of the pain and also balance everything else that I mentioned in this tiers. And when you're doing that, you're creating whole body wellness. You're creating a lifestyle that will prevent the pain from returning. You're creating a lifestyle that will prevent further damage and reduce damage to the skin. Lifestyle is so key. It's emotionally powerful, it's physically powerful, and it's tier 7 of your essential oil therapy system, the 7-tiered aromatherapy system. Those are the 7 tiers. Now let's take a look at what does all this mean? We need to understand we have 7 tiers. How are we going to integrate that into a practical application? And this is just a brief explanation of that. Is you're going to create a holistic approach to essential oil therapy. I've been saying that over and over again. The tiers are interconnected. So when I say interconnected or synergistic, I'm basically saying it's holistic. And this allows for precision in treatment and personalized client care. Personalization is so important when it comes to creating a bond with your guest. It does take more effort, more time, more energy, more learning, but oh, so worth it, right? Because guests are looking for that. They're looking for a personalized experience. When they come to you, they want to know that you are very unique. They can't go next door, down the street, around the corner to get you. So you need to make yourself unique. The more you learn and study about essential oils, the more powerful this individuality will be for you and for what you can present and provide to your guests. Personalization is powerful, and that's one of the ways these tiers work. And to incorporate them, I mean, it's these systems are all happening at the same time. So you need to understand these more and more and more. And, it's going to be a little bit more education that you're going to need to work with these tiers. But right now, just doing this, you're getting some good knowledge. If you're using essential oils already, take these 7 tiers and put them in your head, and you will notice how each tier is working every time you use essential oils. So here we're going from symptoms to personal context. So this system, it allows you to shift focus from merely addressing symptoms. Have I said that enough? You're not dealing with the symptom, you're dealing with the person with the symptoms, and you're looking for understanding the underlying patterns. That was what I discussed in tier 6, the unique code, and understanding who the person is. Because to be more effective with your essential oils, you need to understand who the person is. Even that example I gave you, somebody with back pain, they come from the Pacific Northwest, now they're living in New York City, how you can look for the underlying pattern that maybe it is that separation from the Pacific Northwest that is partly why this person is having pain. So these are the things you need to look for. You need to look for the personal factors that are involved in who this person is and what's happening with them. This is a framework. And the framework is the system. And it's structured, but it's structured in the way that I'm structured. I am a very non-linear person. When I work with essential oils, it's not from here to here to here. I'm looking big picture. I want to find where things are connected. I want to look and see who that person is so I can see what is who the person is. I want to know their framework. I want to know what their structure is. I want to know what their personality is. I want to know what all the things that are affecting them are. Now, when you observe interactions across the tiers, as a practitioner, you're going to gain insight into individual responses. And this is going to foster tailored treatments. This is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And what we're looking at, kind of give you a review of everything we just did. Okay, so let's back up and start from what I expressed at first. We tend to work with essential oils in lanes. If I say inhalation, most people are going to think what? Emotions. Every once in a while you go, oh, respiratory. It's good for the lungs. Because we're putting olfactory just with breathing. And then for just common knowledge in aromatherapy, when you smell it, that's the thing that triggers the emotional impact. That's holistic. I have 3 systems, by the way, that are all about pulling all of this information together. So this 7 tiers aromatherapy system is the newest one I created that takes everything that I work with and pulled it together. The outside, inside out method is another system I created. And is it anything new? No. It's just the precise way that I look at evaluation that reflects how you're going to use essential oils. So I talked about that, outside, inside out. Look at what's going on out here, how the person internalizes that information, how it's expressed outside. The other system I have is the holistic essential oil triad. That's also very key in understanding how you're going to work with essential oils. Because what you're looking at here in this holistic triad is I have a Venn diagram. And again, what I'm expressing in the triad system is that everything is interconnected. The triad looks at 3 different ways that essential oils work. They work from an olfactory response, breathing it in. They work from a pharmacological perspective. And what I'm referring to there is when I use pharmacology, it's drug-like explanation. And the cellular communication or the receptors, even olfactory nerve endings are receptors, but the receptors in the body. And you do have receptors in your gut. So when you do essential oils internally, you are getting some receptor response. So it's not always about absorption into the bloodstream. This is something that I'm not going to get into too deep here, but just ignore that aspect of essential oil therapy. If you're doing oils internally, if you're not doing it for something specific, usually medical, like either digestive or liver, antibacterial, very medical conditions. If you're using essential oils every day and drinking them, mostly what you're doing, and a lot of people scream safety, not so much. There is a safety issue, but that's not the real scream issue. The scream issue is you're wasting your oils. You're using way too much oil to get the same benefit you're going to get from topical and inhalation. Medical use is when you do internal. But the receptors are there. You have receptors, CBD receptors, or CB1 and 2 receptors, endocannabinoid. When you take oils, they're going to bind with that, and they're going to be anti-inflammatory. But you have to do a lot more oil internal to get that response than if you put the oil just topically, you get the response. Now, again, medically, there are situations where you could do internal and it works. So, cell receptors, pharmacology, in the triad, all that stuff I mentioned goes under pharmacology. I'm doing my Venn diagram here, like that. Okay, so that's my circles. And then the other one is metaphysical. In the metaphysical category, it's, I don't know. And what I'm talking about is energetic frequency, Reiki. We know Reiki has really powerful therapeutic effects, but why? Now, if you take that into a lab and try and analyze it, there could be, electromagnetic frequencies that are being transferred and communicating between person and person without touching. And so all of these practices, when we talk about qi, Chinese medicine has a lot of energetic working with meridians, but likely, and I haven't researched it recently, but I think there has been some evidence showing what the physical response is. So when you're in metaphysical And now I'm talking about that energetic and chakras. Chakras are another thing. What's that? How does that work? We know it works. It's been around for thousands of years. If it didn't work, it would have been dismissed a long time ago. And again, the Venn diagram. So the things I'm talking about in the metaphysical, those energetic and Reiki and everything else, those create a physical response. So if you're using essential oils on a metaphysical level, at the same time, simultaneously, you're creating a pharmacological response. You're also creating an olfactory response because unless you're plugging the nose, which why would you do that? You're having an inhalation and you're getting an olfactory response. So in the holistic essential oil triad, I'm showing you how there's an overlap, there's a synergy, there's an interconnected aspect to understanding how essential oils work. That does need to be understood. And I do have a book out on that. You can go to, I'm going to have to give you my email for that one. I still have it hidden. It's a secret. You can't get that book. But it's the Holistic Essential Oil Triad book, and it explains both the triad and the OIO, outside, inside, out method. But they both fit into the 7 tiers. And so when you are working with essential oils, you're getting out of that linear lane recipes from a book framework. You're going into something that is a little more expressive, a lot more interconnected, and a lot more therapeutically precise. Now, I did tell you this story. I think it was before I really started the course. I was telling the story of why I came up with the tiers, and this is only 2 months ago when I was at this educational spa show for NASM Pro. Go to one if you haven't been to one yet here in the U.S. And as I was talking to the estheticians, because I had my booth, I had my stuff, I actually said this to him. I was saying, I bet you were thinking I'm going to tell you what lavender does, and if you have inflammation, you're going to use, helichrysum, or if you have scars, you can use helichrysum and rosemary verbenone, and here's the oil for this and oil for that. I don't do that because it's these tiers that I want to express. And one of the reasons, if you're new to essential oils and all you're doing is going into books and books and books, which is the way to do it. Yes, you want to do that, but also get out of your head a little bit, get into this more expansive approach. When you understand these tiers exist, and you're just doing oils based on intuition, you learn more, you experience more, and you may come up with phenomenal blends that you wouldn't have done if you were just going by recipes in a linear process through chemistry in a book. So the tiers came about as I was explaining how essential oils work. And the students would ask me a question, and my answer would always be, well, you could use, again, let's go back to that pain example I used. If you have, and this would be, massage therapist, back pain, anti-inflammatory from the chemistry, you want to use helichrysum, one of the best. But then again, I want to incorporate it into what's the biophilic response? What is the nature response I want to deliver to this person? Even without intentionality in that, the person is responding to nature and a connection to nature, because that's what essential oils are. Now, when I understand the outside, inside out prospect, what are your stressors? What are the ways you're responding? Do I want to just reduce the stress and the tension, which would cause back pain? Yeah. And I can do that, from the ones I mentioned earlier, marjoram, lavender, whatever. And that's both chemistry and olfactory. Okay, so I have those 2 tiers going on. The biophilic, I can include that, but who is the person, the unique code? Who is that person's unique code? I can put oils in that address that beyond the biophilic that I responded to, which I said that based on understanding the person, right? But I'm turning that into a biophilic tier. So you can see the way I keep overlapping and understanding from the big picture, the power of 7, the 7 tiers. This is what I want you to understand here. I mentioned this a few times, so I'm going to mention it again. When what you want to do is sign up for this course if you're interested in learning more, because I can only give you an overview. This is only an overview. I can't tell you the whole story. What you need to learn next is how to apply the 7-tier system. I've described this in so many different ways. I just have so many ways of explaining what this tiered system is. But in this course, in depth, so what I'm going to show you is how to choose the essential oils based on the tiers, which I'm going to include the inside-outside method, and I'm also going to include the holistic triad in this course. So you're really going to get in depth on how to select essential oils based on the tiers. But we'll go through a lot of different symptoms. We'll go through a lot of different conditions. I'm always especially focused on skincare, which I think for anything, skincare is a remedy. You know, when I can go back to that back pain issue, I could use skincare, facial care, to help harmonize and prevent backache. That's something I will address in this course because it's something that is very key to how I work with essential oils. I do have a QR code here, 30% off of, and it gets down a little over $100 instead of the $150 or somewhere in that range that I have on the price. This code will take you right to where you sign up and it'll automatically discount. If you can't, if you're on your phone right now, it's really hard to do a QR code. So go to jimharrison.com and right at the top of my homepage is a link that goes to the course. If you use this code 7tiers, it will also give you the 30% off on that course, that system, the 7-tiered system. That's coming up in September. It's 2 days. 2 Tuesdays. I'm starting at 9 a.m., just like I'm doing here. It's going to be an hour and a half each time. I am going to allow for a lot of questions in that course, so you're going to get a good 1 hour of intense information. I tend to pack a lot of information in my courses, and so I did okay in this one. I thought I overpacked it, but I've given you just enough information so you can understand the 7 tiers. You can start working with this. This is recorded. You can go back on LinkedIn and YouTube and use this video to reference back to see what the 7 tiers are. See how you can incorporate your essential oil work into the 7 tiers. If you're on YouTube, do all the stuff, the subscribe and like and ping and ding and all that, whatever else goes on. Do the same thing here on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Always posting information. I have a lot of information to share, lots and lots of information to share. And one of the best ways to do that is bring me into your spa, bring me into your location. I do visitor practitioner type events. And what I do there is I'll actually do a staff training and I'll do guest workshops. I have one on storytelling with essential oils, experiential essential oil work for emotions and stress. And I just have a lot of different, hour-long experiential workshops that I can do with the guest and be there to train your staff. So just contact me. I want to pull up some stuff. I want to see if anybody has any questions because I've been totally ignoring you guys for questions and everything else. Let me pull up my email address. So if you do want my email address here, I'm going to put that away. You can get me here if you want to. And any questions, you can go to jimharrison.com. And on jimharrison.com, you can get directly on my calendar. You can see some of the online consultations and little mini workshops I do. If you want me to show up in your space, we need to speak directly because I personalize that for you. And I always bring a essential oil kit, of course, and I'm going to leave that. So it's about $450 or so in essential oils that I'm going to leave with you. Let me see. I have been ignoring any comments. So let me see. Ba, ba, ba. Okay. No comments. No one wants to talk to me. Okay. Does that mean I did it right? Because you don't have any questions? I think we're hitting time anyway. And I want you to come back. I want you to understand that this is a system that really empowers you when it comes to working with essential oils. And it absolutely gives you more precision, a much more enhanced ability to create powerful therapeutic formulas, yeah, especially if you get into personalization. But yeah, contact me. Love you guys. And I'll see you in my next presentation. Thanks.